Fleck's backstory is
because I got sniped.
finds out that he's adopted.
Did we get points? I did tell you not to land pleasant, listen to loads about it, but you just don't seem to want to listen to me ever.
I got sniped, headshot, and then hit from the back.
So there's no
There's
telling
nothing I can do if you don't
application.
listen to me. I did
We
tell
know
you
now that parts of
pleasant.
the movie were simply in his head, but they don't really reveal how much of it. Is it possible that it was all in his head?
They do
There's a
actually.
theory that the whole movie was just his imagination, and the only true scene of the entire film was right there at the very end. We actually did an entire video about it that you can check out over here. All that we can confirm about Arthur Fleck is his
Why did you
penchant
leave?
for chaos.
Why did you leave the
He's the
party?
Joker after all, so he thrives on
I didn't.
being an outcast who's been
Yeah.
ostracized from society, and in turn decided that he wants to punish everyone. He was bullied and laughed at for his awkwardness and his laughing condition, to the point where he felt like he didn't belong. The very same thing could be said about the Grinch. Arthur probably feels like he's living up in the mountains above Whoville sometimes. So the theory is that the Grinch is just an alternate reality that Arthur Fleck creates in his own imagination. The Grinch is a character that he can totally relate to in almost every single way, right down to the feeling of being exiled from normal society and wanting to take it out on those people.
Are you going to do it or not?
The only difference is that the Grinch was able to turn a new leaf and make that very valuable change at the end of the film. That's something that Arthur struggles with. He wishes that he could be better, but he continues to be disappointed time and time again by society and the people within it. He's continuously reminded about how bad human beings are, despite wishful thinking for the opposite. Of course, as is the case with antisocial personality disorder, he'll never look at himself as the problem or take any of the blame. As long as he's suffering from the illness, he'll be unwilling to change, and as long as he's unwilling to change, he'll always be searching for ways to blame
Alex,
other
are you
people
coming
for
on or not? 'Cause
everything,
if not, I was
and
going
then
to
try
down
holding them accountable. The Grinch represents
It's
the
fine if
change
you're not
that
coming on.
Arthur wishes he could make but can't. So, like,
Yeah, fine,
does that make little Cindy Lou the next Harley
I'm
Quinn?
going on what?
What do you guys think?
That's what I wanted to go on. But you said no, I'm doing Fortnite. So I'm now on Minecraft.
In the comments section below. Let us know. Before you go,
coming on?
make sure to hit that like button. If you haven't already, be
I'll buy it in a
sure to
minute.
subscribe to Stream Rant to stay up to date on all of our latest releases. Until next time, bye!
Just got to create another diamond pickaxe.
Gotta go back on in the toilet. I feel alive.
This Boxing Day, Amazon delivers you the Premier League.
Brilliant goal! Wonderful from Fulmer! Magnificent! Oh yes! Stunning strike! Spectacular! No stroke! What a start! This is Traore!
All Boxing Day games, live and exclusive, included with Amazon Prime.
But Master Yoda said I should be mindful of the future.
But not at the expense of the moment.
You know what is one of the benefits of creating a series completely out of order? Not only can you put out the best parts first, hooking people on your story so they have to watch all of the preceding entries, but you can also retroactively add in some sweet moments of foreshadowing in the prequel films that you make later. Seems that George Lucas realized this as he managed to add in a lot of small moments that contained connections to future films and, of course, the original trilogy. Is it foreshadowing if it's connected to something that's already happened? Past shadowing? That sounds just a little bit weird, though it is more accurate. Whatever. We'll just go with foreshadowing for now. Oh, I have a bad feeling about this. So let's take a look at a handful of moments of foreshadowing that you may have missed in the prequel trilogy, and see what they were trying to tell us.
I'll do what I must.
Let's start things out with The Phantom Menace, everyone's favorite Star Wars film. So if you have spent any amount of time on the internet as a Star Wars fan, you've probably heard 80,000 people mention how George Lucas said way back when, during production of the prequels, that good stories should rhyme. Most of the time, the references to this line are done in jest. However, here we have a case where George put his money where his mouth was. In The Phantom Menace, at the very beginning, we see Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi boarding the Trade Federation ship in order to negotiate an end to the conflict between the Trade Federation and Naboo. In Return of the Jedi, we see C-3PO and R2-D2 entering Jabba's palace in order to try to negotiate the end of the conflict between Jabba and Han Solo. Seems rather similar. And even the visuals bear a striking resemblance to each other, with the hallways of both locations sharing similar architecture. Reference or retroactive foreshadowing? We'll leave that up to you. Either way, this is one time when the saga most definitely rhymed. The Phantom Menace added a lot of details to the franchise that, love them or hate them, are official canon, and really expanded the backstories of a lot of our favorite characters.
Thank you, R2-D2.
One such example is the Golden Protocol droid himself, C-3PO, who had his very creation shown in Episode 1. Back then, though, he wasn't quite so golden yet. In fact, he had no body plates at all. We are, of course, talking about when it was revealed that little Anakin Skywalker indeed built the droid. Now, this bit of foreshadowing isn't about the protocol unit, but rather its creator. A Reddit user named ChodPlease7 argued that this revelation wasn't just a cutesy way to introduce the fan-favorite robot, but a way of foreshadowing young Anakin's future as a bit of a robot himself. See, he always found more comfort around machines than the other children on Tatooine, and it was this lack of human empathy and connection to others that started him on his path towards becoming Darth Vader. That's some crazy stuff. Speaking of Anakin and droids, it is quite possible, in fact we're going to go ahead and say that it's pretty much a complete and total fact, that Anakin's interest in machines, specifically droids in this case, is a sign of his need for control as an adult. Now what do we mean here? Well, it's rather simple. Look at Revenge of the Sith. Look at Anakin's fall. It was caused by him feeling as if he didn't have control over his future, over his position within the Jedi, over whether or not his wife was going to survive childbirth. So he went ahead and became Darth Vader, a role that allowed him some semblance of control. Look at how he was as a child. He didn't have any sort of say over his life. He was a slave, which means he had to do what other people told him to do. And he was a child, which in of itself comes without much freedom. But as a builder, around technology, he had all the power then, hence why he may have been just a little bit obsessed. Star Wars is well known for a lot of things. Awesome action, fantastic adventures, eye-watering, cool laser swords, and of course the music. John Williams' scores are instantly recognizable and iconic. Play basically any song from any of the films, and odds are someone around you will know exactly which film in the saga it was from. Which makes it sort of odd when specific themes are reused in what seems to be completely different contexts. But how different are they really? Look at the scene in The Phantom Menace when the droid army is unleashed upon the fields of Naboo. During that moment, a specific musical cue began to play. We'd play it for you here, but you know, copyright and all that. Pretty sure you know which one we're talking about. Nowhere else you could hear that exact musical cue when the clone troopers were introduced in Attack of the Clones. This subtle bit of musical play goes a long way to highlight the darker future that the clones will play a part in bringing about. It also shows that, despite being on opposite sides of the war, the droids and the clones are both simply puppets of Darth Sidious and his evil machinations. As moviegoers, we all basically knew how things were going to play out in the prequel trilogy before we even saw them, in that we knew that it would all eventually lead to the rise of Darth Vader, the Emperor, and the Galactic Empire. It could be argued, though, that Qui-Gon may have also known where things were going. At least he did a dang good job of foreshadowing the future when he said what is perhaps one of the most memed lines in the entire franchise. Hello there. There's always a bigger fish. While in this case he was obviously talking about the giant fish that they had just saw eat a smaller one, it could be argued that the line was drawing attention to how there was going to be a bigger threat than the ones that we see. The Phantom Menace gave us Darth Maul, Attack of the Clones gave us Count Dooku, but behind them all, though, was the bigger fish, that being Darth Sidious, the biggest fish. Joking aside, Qui-Gon obviously didn't know that, but it's still a cool bit of foreshadowing regardless. Moving on to Attack of the Clones, we should take a look at what was the true main point of that second film, that being the love story between Anakin and Padme. As we all know, these two lovers were not exactly destined to have a happily ever after.
You turned her against me!
You have done that yourself.
However, the very scenes themselves showcase the sort of doomed nature of their relationship. Look at the earlier scenes. They are bright and vivid, with colors just all over the place, showing the relative innocence of what's going on. However, as their relationship gets more and more serious, the mood shifts, with darker colors not only in terms of lighting and backgrounds, but also Padme's outfits. Looking at this, you can clearly see things moving more and more into a darker direction, which would ultimately lead to the dark end of their relationship. Can't get much darker than passing away because of a broken heart. Brutal. You know that very famous poster for the Phantom Menace where the younger child version of Anakin cast a long shadow on a nearby wall? You know, the one that bore resemblance to Darth Vader, showing us all that this little blonde kid was going to eventually become the most feared villain in the entire galaxy? Well, did you know that there was a similar shadow in Attack of the Clones? While Anakin and Padme are chilling on Tatooine later on in the film, the dual sunset causes the young Jedi to cast a shadow against a nearby wall. That's definitely looking like the Dark Lord of the Sith himself. Also helps the moment that Anakin's time on Tatooine in this film is probably one of the darkest moments in the entire prequel trilogy.
They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals.
After Anakin and Padme made their way to Geonosis in order to try to rescue Obi-Wan from the clutches of the evil Separatists, they failed pretty miserably.
Then we decided to come and rescue you. Good job.
Now finding themselves in need of a rescue, the two, along with Obi-Wan, were chained up in the middle of the Geonosis arena. Look at how they're arranged, with Anakin in the middle and Padme and Obi-Wan on either side of him. This is an interesting way of arranging them, as it foreshadows the conflict raging within Anakin. On one hand, you have Anakin's loyalty to the Jedi Order, in this case represented by his master and old friend, Obi-Wan. On the other hand is his budding relationship with Padme, which flies in the face of the established rules of the Order. Jedi aren't really supposed to love, and yet, here he is. This symbolized the struggles that Anakin will have to deal with for the rest of the trilogy. So it's a pretty cool visual metaphor. No matter whether you're looking at things through the lens of the now non-canon expanded universe or the current canon, the color of a Jedi's lightsaber actually tells you quite a bit about who that Jedi is and what mindset they currently have. Throughout the prequel trilogy, Obi-Wan and Anakin both rock the classic deep blue color that we most associate
What's it
with
called
Jedi.
then?
Symbolically, this shows that the two of them were connected on a deep level.
No.
They were master and apprentice, sure, but it was more than that. They were comrades,
Minecraft W, pleb.
friends, brothers even. Throughout the trilogy, for the most part, they shared the same ideals
Yeah.
and priorities. However, at one point in Attack of the Clones, Anakin was not as in sync with Obi-Wan as he was earlier.
I think I will.
Later
Come
at the
on.
time that he was given a green blade. While, yeah, he didn't get to choose the color of the replacement lightsaber he was given by a random Jedi bro, we are talking symbolism here, people, and that is about as symbolic as things can get. And yeah, by the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, Anakin was back to blue again. But you could argue that was because the Clone Wars brought the two back together again. Or they could just have needed him to have a blue blade so it could be given to Luke later. Either or. Remember earlier how we were talking about that whole good stories have to rhyme spiel that George Lucas was such a fan of? Well, that came in full force in Revenge of the Sith. At the very beginning of the film, we get a rather quick lightsaber duel between Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Count Dooku. When the duel comes to an end, Anakin is put into a position where he is given the choice to either spare Dooku